Yo, what up? Charlie McCormack here. And in this video, I want to talk to you about why I believe that copywriting makes you a better person. Okay? Bit of a stray one for this channel because I usually only talk about webinars. Kind of related. It's kind of only B2B content on this channel, helping people scale webinars or whatever. But I had this thought the other day, right? So I've worked with a lot of copywriters. I am a copywriter. I've generated over £1 million. Sorry, £1 million, well over $1 million for clients, primarily by me writing words to a group of people, depending on which client I was working for, right? I've worked with a bunch of copywriters. I've reviewed a bunch of copy, either through webinars or for people in coaching programs that I've been in who are copywriters, right? And what I typically find is that the people who write the best copy, okay, the people who, whose email newsletters who you enjoy reading, the people whose YouTube videos you enjoy watching, the people's webinars who you watch that are most persuasive, there's almost like a correlation between people who are good at writing copy and the people who have a deep understanding of who they are and what they do and their own flaws. And I explain to you what I mean by that. So a massive part of copywriting, right, is it's salesmanship in print, right? And salesmanship is, in my mind, we're taking a person with a problem and we're kind of using vocabulary to help them make a decision that, depending on your product, hopefully you don't have some black hat bullshit going on, would be better for them, okay? So we're insinuating change through words, okay? And I learned very on in the copywriting process that you have to, even in a very basic copywriting course that I paid like a $997 for on a webinar, of the importance of like market research and stuff, right? So knowing the customer, knowing their pains, knowing their desires, knowing the problems they have, knowing the things that they think about before they go to bed, right? But it's very difficult to be a good copywriter and to be able to really deeply and intimately feel what a market is feeling and write to that market if you don't have a deep sense and clarity on your pains and your desires and what you think about and all of these things, right? So it kind of made me, I look back on on the months I've made the most money, on the webinar campaigns in which we've made the most amount of money for clients, right? And I look back on the newsletters that I've written and the copy that I've written for clients, and I think, what was kind of going on in my life that I was able to, articulate these arguments in such a way that the market resonated with it. And typically it was when I was going through phases of challenge myself, okay? Now, let me give you an example. I've made in my business well over 6 figures, okay, since I started. It's nothing to write home about. Most people, not most people, but a lot of people in the space make over six figures a month. A lot of people make $1 million a month, right? It's nothing to write home about, but I'm pretty damn happy about it. And a lot of that was generated from just me working in the business, okay? I was essentially a glorified freelancer with a limited company in the United Kingdom, right? And, towards... maybe like 3-4 months ago, I felt like my copy just wasn't like, I felt like I wasn't really, when you read it back and I feel like I just wasn't really hitting home the points that I wanted to hit home. And, maybe the results weren't as good as usual. And I was like, what's happening here, right? But I've noticed that recently the results that we're getting for clients are phenomenal. Okay. And I feel like it's because I have undergone this personal change, right, where I've actually started hiring, I've actually started expanding, and I've actually started taking a little bit more risks, right? So I hired someone, gave him a decent percentage in the business, more than decent, and really, started to kind of shift my identity and actually start to make change myself. So when I'm writing this copy and when I'm articulating these arguments, I feel like I can actually put some vigor and some, do you know what I mean? Just some love into it because I am personally changing myself. And when I look at, copywriters who are getting into the industry, right? And I don't see them going through these personal development stages where, how do you expect someone else to feel emotion in your copy and really have it resonate with them if you're not doing anything yourself? How can you go and create a market research document talking about all the pains and the desires and the wants and the needs and the things that are stopping people doing what they're doing when you're not doing them yourself? Think about it. Think about Hormozy, right? A great example. Did a $100 million book launch, okay? And you can take part and parcel between, obviously he's done a fuck ton of YouTube videos and this isn't purely a copywriting thing, but he literally used words, right? The books he sold, the offer that people paid for on the webinar was a collection of words. And the way that he used to sell it was a collection of words on a slideshow. And he got people to be there by using a collection of words on an ad. And he got people to sign up for it using a collection of words on a landing page, right? So it's all copy, okay? And when you look at Hormozi as a copywriter, he said that he wrote every single piece of copy for that campaign. But it's because Hormozi's done the work, right? He can actually pour his emotion into that copy because, and he doesn't feel like any sort of sense of like being a fraud, right? So I remember I was writing for this offer that was like basically targeted at people like me. And I was like, how the fuck can I tell these people that they need to fucking change X, Y, and Z when I need to do these exact same things myself? So in order to be a good copywriter, it makes you more aware of who you are. And it also, by being in tune with who you are and what your problems are, you can kind of open up a lot more to what these prospects might actually be struggling with and the things that aren't just like structural things they're struggling with, right? So for example, let's say we're selling an Amazon FBA offer, okay? Classic, okay? And you're writing the copy for it. The structural things that are wrong with it are the, like, oh, I don't know where to get suppliers and I don't have inventory and, shipping costs and ad costs are high and whatever. These are structural problems, right? These things can be fucking solved. But there's real underlying things that are holding them back. And unless you can identify them within yourself, clearly articulate them and attack them, your copy will be weak. It will be weak. Okay, and I've seen this time and time again with people writing copy, and I look at their copy and then I kind of look at them and I'm thinking, you're trying to insinuate change in people at scale, especially when we're doing things like webinars, right? We're putting words on a screen to an audience worth of people and expecting them to take massive action in order for the campaign to be a success, okay? And you kind of look at the people writing it and you look at who's behind it and you think, are you pulling punches? Are you holding back because you're not changing the things that you know you need to change? It's just food for thought. And I wanted to sit down and make a video about it because I think it's important. I think being a copywriter makes you a better human being. Because in order to be a good copywriter, you have to be in touch with people's emotions, right? You have to know what makes them tick, okay? But how do you expect to be in touch with people and help people make the right decisions if you can't even do it for yourself? You have to put the love into the copy, right? You have to write from a place of like love and care in a sense, right? Obviously, a lot of the time, a lot of copywriters are targeting pain points, but I really like to write from a place of, don't you see this? Like, don't you see how much more you could be? Don't you see that there's these strange things stood in your way that you have kind of given weight to that make everything feel so much more difficult for you? You have to be able to identify these things in yourself in order to really feel the emotion of the prospects. And it's almost like you learn to, once you can see this within yourself, you learn to read between the lines, and then you learn to read your prospects deeper and the market you're writing to deeper because you know how to read yourself deeper. If you can't read yourself deeply and sort your own problems, how the fuck are you going to read a fucking market? People you probably never even met. It's just food for thought. It's just food for thought.